Sorry, guys, trying to get off the cigarettes. Well, welcome to Friday, the 27th, South Carolina. Cooler, wet, rainy weather. Just wanted to take a minute and talk about our current political climate. Um, I'm just kind of curious how many people realize, okay, a lot of things were brought to people's attention that weren't there previously back in April, just last month, with the baby formula shortage. Well, let's travel back in time another month. March. Sometime in March, I saw a news story where they were talking about 6 of the largest food, packaging and distribution centers in the United States either blew up or caught on fire mysteriously. This after we would already been told about supply chain problems and already having food issues. So the food shortages and continued inflation, demand on food and whatnot had already been negative impacted. Then back in March, they were negatively impacted again. Let's take it a step back to February. February, Biden, during one of his press meetings, got on the news and was talking about the inflation, prices going up, and he was also talking about the supply chain problem once again, even though supposedly the administration and the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Transportation and Agriculture were supposed to be working on it, blaming a lot of it on bottlenecks in the West Coast ports. Well, a lot of people focused on California, but it was in Washington and in between those two states. I mean, it was the entire West Coast. A lot of the harbors and shipping ports here on the East Coast ended up taking far more traffic than they could, trying to alleviate the West Coast. To include Charleston Harbor became far more busier. But Biden had already said, expect food shortages. So February, he says expect food shortages. March, we have 5 or 6 of the largest food processing and distribution centers in the U.S. catch fire or blow up, which are still unexplained. Was buried for a long time until the story broke about all 6 of them. And then April, we have baby formula shortages. I find that a little odd that the president would say something like that, and then all of a sudden these things would happen. Then you go and you look at the fact that prices are still going way up. Gas prices have gone so high that there are some people who want to work but can't afford to work because they can't afford to drive to work. They can't afford to put gas in their car. All right, that's just the local. That's just the, well, not local. That's the internal U.S. problem. Here's more of our current political situation. Russia has said repeatedly if the U.S. gets directly involved in this Ukraine situation, they're not afraid of using nuclear weapons. Okay. Threats were made back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s saying things along those lines, coming from Russia, Cuba, China. Well, despite what we were warned and told, we start sending munitions and getting directly involved. We don't have troops on the ground in Ukraine, but we have troops on the ground in all of the countries around Ukraine. Once again, Russia says if the U.S. gets directly involved, they're going to start using tactical nukes. The U.S. gets more involved. The U.S. gets even more involved. Russia keeps making the statement. Are they saber rattling? Are they bluffing? Maybe. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But I'll tell you what, Russia turned around and said that if it's either Sweden or Switzerland and New Zealand petition and apply to join NATO, that they're going to use tactical nukes. About 2 weekends ago, the news story broke that those exact same 2 countries applied to join NATO. Interesting. Last weekend it was talked about. There was a news story that I read. I came across it on social media. Somebody shared it. I'm kind of trying to stay away from the news, but every once in a while something catches my attention. There was a press release from one of the higher-ups in Ukraine who made a statement to, I don't know, a foreign news agency. I want to say it was one of the U.S. news agencies, but I might be wrong. Statement claimed that the U.S. government and the Biden administration were working on developing a plan to sink the Russian fleet, naval fleet, in the Black Sea. Somewhere later on in the article, it was discussed that the Harpoon missile and launching system were supposed to be sent to Ukraine from the U.S. Supposedly somebody in the, I want to say, Biden administration turned around and said that that was false news. They weren't looking at doing that. The problem with that person saying it is that two people from the Pentagon turned around and confirmed, saying that they were working with Ukraine to develop a strategy and a plan for sinking Russia's Navy in the Black Sea. Now, the Russian Navy in the Black Sea is blockading basically the Black Sea, but they're really blockading Ukraine. They're not letting any vessels or ships in, whether humanitarian aid or otherwise. At least that's the news story that we're being given. Now, one of the discussions and the arguments in this supposed plan was that in order for Ukraine to use the Harpoon missile system, they actually have to take a Harpoon missile launcher system off of one of our destroyers and get it to Ukraine. Theoretically, technically, that wouldn't be an issue, except I'm still trying to figure out why would we be taking one off of one of our destroyers to send to them instead of just purchasing one from the manufacturer and sending it to them. Here's the other problem. They don't know how to use this system, so the discussion from the two people in the Pentagon was that they also have to find a way to send American military personnel to train Ukraine on how to use this system, how to set it up, load it, reload it, use it, and so on. Kind of sounds like Vietnam to me all over again. We're sending military advisors and equipment, is what we're being told. But those advisors, I will bet money, are actually getting involved in the conflict. Just like they were with the Vietnam conflict. For the first several years, we were told no active U.S. military were directly involved with the fighting. They were only there to train, guide, and suggest. Years down the road, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, a lot of documents were finally declassified and released. We found out that found out that our so-called training and advising personnel were actually over there directly involved with the conflict, picking up a gun, shooting, so on and so forth. You don't think this is going on in Ukraine? Putin has said several times the U.S. and NATO need to stay out of it and not escalate this conflict, whatever it is. Fine. I agree. We need to stay out of it directly. I can agree with that. But some of the other stuff that's coming to light, they're doing the exact things that Putin has said not to do, or else he's going to use nuclear weapons, to include these two countries applying for NATO membership. Our administration is taking us directly down the pathway to a nuclear war. Think about it. We've also got catch and release programs all over the country. Violent crime is going up. It's interesting that the gun grabbing narrative started all over again. Now we have several mass shootings. It's like clockwork. Just think about it. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying think about it. Until next time, you guys watch your six.